Okay, so I'm going to move on now to show you some fast processing, or relatively fast processing on a Galaxy. So I've selected M51. Reason being that M51 always scrubs up well in photos. So you know, even if you don't do a great job of processing it and you don't use all the tricks and that are available, you can still get a really nice image of this particular target. So as before, I've got my subs from my Seestar S30 Pro off the Seestar, and I've stacked them in PixInsight, but obviously you could use any other stacking tool. And here is the stacked image. So without stretch, it's just black. If I put a stretch on it, you can now see right in the very center is M51 Whirlpool Galaxy. So okay, so up first, I'm going to process this in a very similar way, at least at the start, to how I did the M3 globular cluster, but I will add a few extra things in. So I'm just going to rename it to start off with. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to basically crop it down. So I'm going to be quite aggressive because M51 on the Seestar S30 is very tiny, so I don't need this massive frame of background. So this is a crude crop that I'm going to do just to get rid of a large amount of data. So processes that are running on every pixel will run much faster if you run on a smaller image like the cropped one than on the initial one. So there we are. I've cropped it down. Just get rid of the crop function. And okay, now as before, whenever you run a crop in PixInsight, it loses the plate solving information, so you have to rerun the this image solver to re-establish it. They could change that, but they haven't. So anyway, so there we are. I've added the image solution back, not changed the image. It's just metadata that is associated with the image. As before, I will take out any gradients. So we'll run Graxpert. Now there's no real vignetting on this crop because I've cropped it down so aggressively. So I'm just going to run it in subtraction mode, and we'll see what we get. So this is the gradient, nice and colourful piece of art that's produced, that it's removed, so that's fine. Now, having removed the gradient, I'm going to calibrate it using the SPCC process. So as per last time, you need to put or you don't have to use this part of the function, but I like to just neutralize any background. So pick a little area of the background that doesn't contain any, or as few stars as possible, and definitely not any bright ones, and then use that as the background in this tool. So select it there, and it will neutralize the background based on the information in that preview. So just run the color calibration tool. So it's going to work as last time, giving the various or a line of best fit between the colors that match the target that you'd specified, in my case the average spiral galaxy. Just remove the preview because I don't need that anymore. Reapply the stretch. See what we got. So that looks okay. Quite happy with that. So now we can just tidy it up a bit. So I will run Blur Exterminator as we did last time, which is an AI deconvolution process that sort of sharpens things up a bit, which is good to do. Makes your stars round and compensates for any optical train issues you might have as best it can. I'm going to run Noise Exterminator next. So I'm just going to run it in a slightly less aggressive way than is the default, because I'll do a little bit of sharpening later. So I don't want to sort of smooth out everything at this stage, as that will mean that the sharpening process potentially won't be able to recover some details. So I've just done some light sharpening, and now I'm going to run this process, which is Star Exterminator. So what this will do is it will separate the image into two. One will be just stars and one will be everything that's not stars. So here's the star image. So you've got really a sort of a zero background, completely black background with the star information, and in the original image we've got the target M51 and the background but no stars. So the reason to do this is you can apply tools to either the stars or the target. You don't have to apply the tool to everything. If you extract the stars, work on them separately, and then when you're happy you can add them back in. So I'm going to work on the stars, and all I'm going to do is stretch them and add some colour. So there's a nice script that Seestar has called Star Stretch. So it's really easy to do. You don't have to do it to use this. You could just stretch it using your favourite stretch tool if that's what you wanted, and then you could apply contrast to make the stars as colourful as you like afterwards. But this tool kind of is a simple way of doing it, so I'm just going to use that. So I can put a preview on. Let's just make this a bit bigger. Let's do window. And it's quite simple to use. You can sort of tell it how much to stretch. I think its default works fine, and you can give it more or less colour boost. So I personally like colourful stars, not everyone does, but you can you know, basically play with the settings to your taste. So that looks alright to me, so I'll just execute that. So the stars image, it's no longer stretched, so the little green bar has disappeared, which means it's not applying its own stretch to the image. It's showing you what the data contains, and we'll park that for now, and we'll come back to that a little later. So turning my attention back then to the target image, which is this M51, what I'll do now is stretch it. So again, I'm going to use this Seestar statistical stretch because it's nice and fast. You don't have to use this, obviously. If you have your own preferred way of stretching, then I would just go ahead with that. But this works quite nicely. It's very simple to use. You can do a preview just to see what it's going to do before it does it. So that looks alright. We've got a tiny bit of colour coming in there, which is good. So yeah, we'll just go with that. So there we are. There's our image. The green bar under the M51 there has disappeared, which means it's stretched, and we have an image to start working on. So I think what I'll do first is I'll just sharpen it a little bit. So this multi-scale median transform allows you to break your image into layers and play with some sharpening, and it's also got some denoising capability as well, at various scales within the image. Now you can spend hours playing around with this. I've just played with this for a few minutes before making the video, and here's the bit. Oops, I'm sorry, I keep doing that. My trackpad on my laptop is not the best. So that's how it is originally, and this is how it is now. So you see a couple of things. One is it's sharpened up the galaxy arms a little bit. The other thing is it's created a lot more noise around the background here. So to avoid getting the noise, what you can do is you can just put a mask on the target so that the the process, whatever it happens to be, in this case the MMT process, will only apply to the parts of the image that are unmasked. So a very simple way to do that in this particular case is to go to mask generation and run the range selection process. Now, just put that on there, reset the tool. So I brought up a preview, and if I drop this down, you'll start to see something happen. So that's about right. So here's the galaxy in white, and you basically got black everywhere else, a couple of very small galaxies here, and the odd sort of pixel, maybe a hot pixel, I don't know if you can see it on the image, sort of dotted around, that I'm not going to worry about too much. With a mask, you typically want to smooth it out so that you don't have hard edges, because if you apply a mask, what you don't want is for the whatever process you're applying to basically have a very sharp boundary, because it will look very odd. So you always need to sort of smooth out that mask, which I've done there, and then just run the process. So what that will do is it will create an image. Get rid of the preview. And here is the image it's created. Now I'm going to use this image as a mask, so it's very simple in PixInsight. Pick that up and drag it here. Let's park that now. This part over here goes sort of a browny colour to indicate there is a mask on. And if I go to here, I can show the mask. So anything red means that those pixels will be unavailable to be changed, so they're sort of locked. Think of them as being locked down. And anything that's not red is not locked down, and therefore if you run a process on the image, those pixels could change. So I'm just going to hide the mask because it's horribly red, but the mask is still on, it's just I'm not displaying it now. So if I go back to my MMT process, I can bring it up, zoom in on the target, and here we have the before and the after. So the other thing you can see now, hopefully on the video, is that the because I've masked the background, that horrible sort of noisy curdling that was visible before is no longer there, because the tool is not changing the background, it's only changing the Galaxy M51. Okay, so I can now just run this process. There we are, that's done. Another way you can do some sort of sharpening is with this tool, local histogram equalization, which is a fairly nondescript sort of name, but that's what PixInsight call it. Again, if I zoom in, you can see a before and an after. I mean, you can play around with this kernel. What I tend to do is look at 75, 150 and 300, something like that. You can apply more in contrast. I would keep this very low, I wouldn't go much above these numbers, and the amount, again, you can vary. I wouldn't go much above 20%, which is what I've got there, but it's up to you. Then just run it. Again, if you have other ways of sharpening the image or just don't want to sharpen it, of course, that is fine. This is just an example of how you might do it. Okay, so next I'm going to try to boost the colours a bit. So if I bring up a preview and then zoom in on the preview, so that's before, that's after. I'm just going to exaggerate this a little bit. There we are. I like contrasty images, not everyone does, so you can play with it to your taste. And again, I'm because I've had the mask on, I'm not boosting the contrast in the background. I'm only boosting it in the galaxy. So I'll run that. Okay. Now, a little trick, if you do have some sort of colours in the background that you don't like, an easy way to get rid of it, if you have this mask, I'll just put it back on, is to invert the mask. So now I'm masking the M51 Galaxy, but I am not masking the background. So any changes I apply to this image now will not affect M51, but they will affect the background. So what I can do now is I can just drop the contrast, so in this case I'm using chroma, and that would, if I put a on here, if I now zoom in on the background, I don't know if you can see it, but I've sort of overdone this. This is probably a bit too much, but this is quite a colourful background. I can see greens, blues, the odd little bit of red, etc. If I apply this chroma change, it's very much a grey background now, but that won't apply to M51. I'll just weaken that off a bit and run it. But it's a nice simple way of, if you've got a colourful background you don't like, you can just drop the chroma or contrast on it very easily with a mask. Okay, so there we are. I'll take this mask off now because I think we've finished with it. So here's our image. If I zoom in a little bit. Okay. So it's a bit noisy still, so I will run Noise Exterminate with its default settings, and that will probably tidy it up quite a bit. Yeah, so you can see it's done a good job of removing the noise. Now the next step will be to add the stars back. So this is a simple pixel math formula. If you're familiar with screening in other photographic applications, you'll probably be familiar with this process because it's really just an unscreening type process. So what it's going to do is it's going to take the two images that we have, which are the starless image of M51 on the left and the image of the stars on the right, and it's going to combine them into one image in a nice way. So there we are, that's that. So I zoom in, you can see there's some stars now back in the image. So that's pretty good. Now again, this obviously M51 with its companion galaxy is sort of an asymmetrical target. So I personally, and this is just personal taste, happen to like it in this particular view. So I've just applied a rotation to it. Now as you can see, it's rotated the image, and it obviously doesn't have any data now because we cropped it away earlier to fill in these black parts. So having rotated it, what I need to do is crop it down, and because we really want to show the M51 target, we're not that interested in the background stars, I'm going to zoom in quite a bit now. So I'll just crop that middle bit out, and I think pretty much that is going to be our final image. So again, you could probably, I suppose I could just play with it a little bit. So I've got a couple of things going on with curves. I've basically put the S curve into the RGB, and I've applied a little bit of chroma and luminance. So again, this is really just to your taste. I like colourful images, not everyone does, but you can basically do this how you want. So I just run this process again. Sorry, clicked on the wrong thing there. I can just boost it up a little bit, So that's it. I think that's our final image. So I think that looks pretty good in comparison to what we started with. I hope you found that interesting.